Welcome to the Paper 3 Political Ideas revision video on feminism. In this video, we will be looking at the idea, are women inevitably oppressed and discriminated against under capitalism? Marxist feminists look back to the ideas of Friedrich Engels, Karl Marx's close colleague, as their inspiration. Engels understood that women are becoming a key element in the future of capitalism. Women, he pointed out, had always been deprived of private property. This resulted in them being oppressed by property owners throughout history, just as propertyless peasants and workers had always been. As capitalism developed and needed increasing quantities of workers, women became a vital source of available low-paid labour. Their lack of property increasingly forced them into paid employment. Modern Marxist feminists take a similar view, but criticise Engels for overstressing the importance of property. In modern society, as women increasingly have come to own property independently, their oppression has not ceased. They remain an exploited part of the workforce. Needless to say, therefore, Marxist feminists see the destruction of capitalism as a precondition for the liberation of women. They argue that both class and patriarchy are sources of oppression. Not surprisingly, therefore, socialist feminists tend to concentrate on issues such as equal opportunities and equal pay for women. Social feminists argue only that for the extreme modification of capitalism will allow women to be liberated from their inferior economic position. Therefore, for example, the state ownership of industry will eliminate the need for women to compete against men for employment. British feminist Shelia Rowbotham is described as a socialist rather than a Marxist, as she rejects the rigid economic determination of Marx. For her, female oppression certainly does have economic roots, but it also stems from the traditional nature of the nuclear family and the cultural dominance of male sexuality. While the economic liberation and equality of women is a precondition for the sexual revolution, it is not sufficient to raise the consciousness of women or to ensure their ability to define their own future. Above all, socialists seek the liberation of women from their economic dependence upon men. This dependence begins in the home, but extends to the economic world in general. Let's have a look at a case study of socialist feminism in action, and for this we're going to focus on the Chicago Women's Liberation Union. The Chicago Women Liberations Union, otherwise known as the CWLU, was the main women's liberation organization in Chicago during the second wave of feminism in the 1970s. The CWLU was formed on the 31st of October 1969, and it was the first and largest of the women's liberation unions formed in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The union organized women with the self-proclaimed collective goal of achieving liberation from sexism and inequality. Within the larger CWLU, smaller groups and chapters formed to address issues such as abortion, rape, childcare, and reproductive health, among others. During the CWLU's 8 years of operation, the activists circulated petitions, held demonstrations, and visited high schools to raise public awareness of women's issues. The CWLU created educational opportunities for women in response to the apparent sexism in the US and connected them to social groups to further the women's liberation movement and women's reproductive health awareness in the United States. The main goal of the organisation was to end gender inequality and sexism, which the CWLU defined as the systematic keeping down of women for the benefit of people in power. The purpose statement of the organisation expressed that changing women's position in society isn't going to be easy. It's going to change the distribution of power over to the rest of us, to all the people sharing power and sharing in the decisions that affect our lives. The CWLU spent almost a decade organising to challenge both sexism and class oppression. The group is best known for the 1972 pamphlet Socialist Feminism, a strategy for the women's movement, which was written by Heather Booth, Day Creamer, Susan Davis, Robin Kaufman, and Toby Glass. This was nationally circulated, and the publication is believed to be the first use of the term socialist feminism. The pamphlet became a foundational text for the socialist feminist movement, offering a comprehensive analysis of the interconnectedness of gender oppression, capitalism, and patriarchy. The pamphlet provided a framework for understanding how women's oppression and exploitation were rooted in both the capitalist economic system and patriarchal societal structure. It argued that the struggle for women's liberation should not be limited to addressing gender inequality alone, but should also encompass the broader fight against capitalism and class exploitation. The pamphlet emphasised the need for a dual struggle approach, where women's liberation and the struggle for economic and social justice were seen as inseparable. It highlighted the common interests and shared struggles of working class women, emphasising the importance of solidarity and coalition building across various social and economic groups. The pamphlet called for a reimagining of traditional gender roles and norms, advocating for women's full participation in all spheres of life, including politics, economics, and culture. It challenged the notion of women as mere homemakers and caretakers, emphasising the value of women's labour in both the public and private sphere. The pamphlet provided a framework for understanding how women's oppression and exploitation were rooted in both the capitalist economic and culture. It challenged the notion of women as mere homemakers and caretakers, emphasising the value of women's labour in both the public and private spheres. Moreover, the pamphlet emphasised the importance of grassroots organising, consciousness raising, and collective action. It encouraged women to come together to share their experiences and collectively analyse and confront the system that perpetuated their oppression. The ideas presented in A Socialist Feminism, a strategy for the women's movement, had a profound impact on the feminist movement of the time and beyond. It helped shape the understanding of feminist theory and practice, particularly within the socialist feminist framework. The pamphlet inspired women across the United States and internationally to form women liberation groups, engage in activism, and challenge the status quo. One of the significant achievements of the CWLU was the establishment of women's health clinics and collective childcare centres. These initiatives aim to provide accessible and affordable healthcare services and childcare options for women, recognising the vital role they played in women's empowerment and liberation. The CWLU operated until the mid-1980s, when it disbanded due to various internal and external factors. However, its impact on the feminist movement and women's rights in Chicago and beyond was substantial. The organisation, activism, and feminist theories influenced subsequent generations of feminists and helped shape the broader women's liberations movement of the time. A key question we need to think about when thinking about socialist feminists and their view of capitalism is, are women inevitably oppressed and discriminated against under capitalism? If we are arguing that yes, they are, it's because as long as men dominate positions of economic power, they will discriminate against women. The predominance of women playing domestic roles means that the men are bound to dominate economic life, and women's innate lack of aggressiveness and competitiveness makes them ill-suited to the world of capitalism. If we're looking at the other side of the argument then, that no, women are not invariably oppressed and discriminated against under capitalism, we can say that women are actually making progress, even if it is slow. They are achieving senior positions and male domination will eventually cease. It is no longer inevitable that women must concentrate on domestic roles either. Women can play a full part in economic life outside the home. There is no such thing as the innate non-aggressive nature of women. They are able to deal with the competitive world just as well as men. In addition, even if women are naturally more caring, this will just make them more humane and a more just form of capitalism.